I should start. It's time. Okay, so that was just me warming up. I'm going to talk about multiplayer. As I say, I've been involved in multiplayer games since 1998. Yes, I'm that old. And some of you who were here earlier hearing my rants about all of the things that I hear multiplayer game teams talking about and what they ignore or forget or miss, you will know that I was involved with things like Counter-Strike, actually, it's a bit of a lie. I just bought them some new computers and they were successful, therefore it's all me. No, it's not true. But the fact is that you get to see that early days where people were trying to make those kind of experiences, being able to see that when we moved to mobile and what we were trying to do with mobile, we actually launched the first ever mobile real-time multiplayer game called Lock and Load on a Symbian device called the Motorola A1000. Yes, they did have a real multiplayer game. Wasn't very good. No, it was fine. It was fine. I also worked on a thing called PlayStation Home. So if you've ever heard anyone talk about the metaverse, yeah, I've been there, done that. Got the T-shirt. In fact, I literally have the T-shirt. I'll get it out one day. So we're going to talk about why I think you cannot ignore the economy in your multiplayer game design. You cannot ignore it. And also, I think you can't ignore monetization. I am not going to tell you you must make the game free to play. I might imply that, but I'm not going to tell. And actually, there are good reasons why some people may not. But we are talking about creating experiences which are about communities at their heart. A multiplayer game is not a multiplayer game if there aren't people. So we're going to try and talk about that. So he says, dunk. No. Let's try again. Dink. No, it's still not working. Interesting. I mean, if somebody wants to move forward, I'm happy to. Oh, there you go. It moved. Right. So yeah, I've done lots of things. I'm a contributing editor at Pocket Gamer. I host a lot of events. I ran Wireplay. I was home architect on PlayStation Home, and in all good bookshops, well, Amazon, you can get my book, which is 10 years old, about games as a service. So we'll move on to the next slide. Hopefully. Moving on to the next slide. What's that? Yes. Oh, Battle of Polytopia, one of my favorite games of all time. A couple of weeks ago, I was in Helsinki, sat next to the product owner of Polytopia, and I basically just fawned all over him for the whole panel session, talking about how much I love the game. It's interesting, with Polytopia, as I play mostly single player, I have a more relaxing, meditative engagement with that game than most people. People who like to play the game intensely, multiplayer, have a different experience. It's interesting. Anyway, I won't bore you with that. Right, so when we are making a multiplayer game, all we have to do is make an awesome game. Do we agree? That's all we need to do. That's it. Job done. Yeah, okay, thanks very much. No. Obviously, that's not the case, because if we've got this terrible thing, we've got to bear in mind. We have to host it. Now, there was a great short talk earlier. You were talking about it. It just took me so far back to the old days where we had. So Wireplay had a bespoke system to deal with the peer and server loading. We actually built rack systems out of old laptop boards before there were rack systems. So I've experienced that whole journey throughout my career. However you manage it, there is some cost involved. There is some, particularly to get to the last mile, as you know, like Cape Town, I think was the reference you used. To get to a good experience for everybody, we are going to have costs. If you're going to have a community who are going to regularly play a game and they're going to always call the cost, why are you charging them once up front? Does that make sense? So if you're going to charge them once up front, what's that going to do to your strategy overall? So, I mean, there might be other ways of doing it. I'm not getting too far in it. The next one, I was kind of hinting at this in my talk earlier, critical mass. Now, other people have different words for this, but critical mass to me is I go in to play the game, and if I don't get to play the game within about 30 seconds, maybe a minute if I'm really, really patient, I rage quit and I delete the game and I never play it again. That's the facts. Now imagine you're an indie team and you're going to make a game that's going to have 50 people minimum to play a battle royale experience. And you are going to recruit enough people to have them simultaneously, concurrently available to be able to play that 30-second window. How are you going to afford that? How are you going to recruit that? Now, you can get lucky. There are some games out there that manage to inspire amazing passion from their audiences. Fantastic for them. Have you tried sustaining that? If you don't get the game perfect the first time, there's attrition. And you've got to keep that momentum up, because if you don't keep that momentum up, that attrition bites you in the bum. There's another thing I think is really important to think about, and that's skill. I'm a massive fan of games of skill, except I'm not very good. I'm rubbish. And the reason I'm rubbish, I've only really recently worked out, is because I have we think I have ADHD, and I think I have a bit of dyspraxia. And you can see that because if you watch me trying to play Star Wars Jedi Survivor, and the amount of times I nearly threw the controller at the TV, oh my goodness. Because if I try to follow exactly the control mechanisms you've set out for me as a designer, I find that I've suddenly, for no apparent reason, I click the circle, not the X, when I should have pressed the square, and oh my goodness, I've just fallen over and killed myself. So skill, we cherish, don't we? We all want skill in a multiplayer game, don't we? That's a good thing. But if I have a great degree of skill bias in my design, where does progression come in? How do you make it so that the skilled player can adequately play against the non-skilled player? And when someone's trying to play with their friends and you're trying to build a community of people, and I can't play with my mates, guess what? I mostly won't turn up. Or at least you're making it harder for me to turn up. It's not fun to watch yourself being pounded by your friend who's really good. I speak as somebody who spent the first few years of his career sat next to some of the best Counter-Strike players in the country, and I definitely was not one of them. So progression is another important factor. Playing together matters, and being able to find designs and structures where we can have people who can play together easily. So one of my favorite mods was a thing called Weapon of Choice. It was designed by a guy called Mark Smith, who works at NVIDIA now. I got to work with him for a few years, lovely chap. The aim of that mod is that I kill you, and therefore I can't use the rocket launcher. I kill you again, I can't use the lightning gun, and I basically have all the weapons taken away from me until I'm left with an axe, and yet you get a room full of people who are newbies running around with rocket launchers. It's not a perfect handicap system, but it's so much more fun than if the person who's good gets the better gun. Because you end up making it so fewer and fewer and fewer people can play together. And again, I'm not saying ignore skill. I'm not saying ignore progression. I'm saying think about the consequences to your community as you design it. And this is a form of balance. And so we're going to get into that. But if we don't think about that balance, we don't think about that connection, we're not going to make an appropriately commercial experience. Anyone think pay to win is a good idea? Yes, we have the first person I think ever in a talk I've given. So I actually don't think pay to win exists. I call it a broken game. Now, there is actually a caveat, and to your defense, if you're dealing with Asian markets, pay to win is actually a normalized factor. There is a way of, particularly in the Korean market, there is a way of playing where you will dump, when you start a game, a large amount of money in order to have an advantage against your friends when you start playing. And that is a normalized behavior, and it works commercially for some games. It's not my preferred choice. But I think pay to win undermines something fundamental, which is it's a game. If I don't build play as an important factor, then I'm not building a game, I'm building a money-generating machine. And I don't think that's a game. Equally, I decide I'm making this game, and I'm later going to come along and I'm going to bolt on monetization. That's going to work, isn't it? Oh, wait. Yeah, so no one enthusiastic about a bolt-on monetization. I'm good, that's what we'd like to hear. So let's get to some basics. I've talked about the problems. I'm now going to try and get to the bottom of what we do about it. And how do we do it in a way where we don't come across as money-grabbing, top hat-wearing, moustache-twirling, anyway, so we're going to try and be not evil about it. Let's think about the psychology. Why do we play? Well, there's various things we get out of it. This is one model. There are many models. Anyone who was in the design model roundtable yesterday will know I have an aversion to people overusing Richard Buttle's 4 types. Richard's lovely, but Richard himself says that was specifically for MUDs. But we think about the psychology. So completion is a human emotional thing we like to do. Competence, feeling competent, something we can do in a game in a unique way. We don't often get the opportunity in the real world to feel competent. Games are let us have that. Control, us feeling that we're in control of the circumstances, a rule set that we can manage and understand, that level of control is actually really interesting because it gives us a sense of escape. A sense of, oh, it's okay, this is our space. And also social capital. So I am good at something. Look at me, look at my works, ye mighty in despair. So that's kind of why I think we play, but why do we pay for things? Well, if we don't have a sense of anticipation, we don't do it. We don't have a sense of fear of missing out. And I'm not talking about dark patterns here. A lot of people will talk about the phrase dark patterns. That just means you're using the psychology for bad, but the psychology still applies. If we don't have a reason to act, we don't act. If you don't communicate why something is valuable and why there's some reason to do it now, people don't. So it's okay to understand that's how human beings work and to design systems that make sense of that. Now, we talked about social capital and showing off wealth or showing off ownership, whether that's gained through spend or through reward. That is a valuable thing. What on earth is abnegation? It's a terrible English word. It kind of is about setting things aside. And I think this is the saving grace for us who want to create ethical experiences. I set aside the other things I know I should do. You can't make me. So I know I should be doing the washing up, but actually the console is calling me, I want to play COD right now, therefore I do. I choose to set aside the things I should be doing, and that's part of the conditions that are required. I have to have all of these things there, or I won't engage and I won't spend any money in the game. And I'm going to make the case, as we go through, that engagement, so choosing the good things in the game to make us want to keep playing and play now, is the same connected element around retention. We don't get retained users if we don't have engaged users, and we don't get revenue in the long term. And I'm interested in long-term revenue. And what is a multiplayer game? I said before, a group of people playing together. We don't get that long-term repeatable playing together. We don't get that community if we don't have that sense of retention. So, I want you to ask one question about your game. Why should I care? Seriously, why should I care enough to part with my hard-earned cash, my time, not even necessarily cash, just my time? Why should I choose your game to play that? Do you know what that is for your game? Have you written it down? Have you worked it out? Have you thought about that quintessential nature? A lot of people will use the phrase unique selling point. And most people who use that phrase have no idea what the word unique means. I will not tell you how many times someone has told me that their pixel-orientated, sideways-scrolling platform game is unique. Seriously, I've seen 50 of them this year alone. I may be exaggerating, but not much. But the point is, understanding why people should care matters. And the way I try and help people think about this is break down, in the way the game operates, what matters, what's happening to the game. Why does the player care? What are the forms of utility? The economics term utility means a need or want state. So subsistence, I need to have this thing or I can't play. I need to have fuel, I need to have energy. Maybe I have to have owned the license of the game. That's a form of subsistence in some ways. Shortcut, so I've better gun, I've got faster things, I've got power-ups. Now, again, this isn't actually about paying for things. This is actually about the economy under the bonnet, as in, if there are not mechanisms in your design that allow for progression, that allow for people to create shortcuts, whether that's improved guns or better armor or ability to move faster, reload faster, aim quicker, whatever it might be, whatever works for your experience. If you don't have vectors in your game, for those of you who heard me yesterday, I went on about vectors a bit too much. If you've got vectors in your game where people can engage and improve and perform better as a result of the way that they've engaged with the game and the progression in the game, you've got no model for anywhere to hook on monetization. Now, you could go social. You could go cosmetic. I've forgotten the name of the guy who said it the other day, but I was at an event, and the phrase was this: there's no point in having a vanity product if you don't have a vanity loop. What does that mean? That means if you can't show off, if you can't make the showing off meaningful, no one cares. And a lot of people try to make their game, oh, it's fine, we'll just do cosmetics. Well, cosmetics only works when people already care about the game and they get to show it off, and not every game is going to get a Fortnite model. Then there's strategy. I like strategy a lot. Strategy for me, what it means in this context, because I was trying to get all S's, classic consultant thing. Strategy is about adding a new way to play. I think about this as like Magic the Gathering card. So if I have this new rule that I can do because I bought that rule or I unlocked that rule as a reward through play, that reward, that new rule, lets me do something that I couldn't otherwise do. It also means, if you do it right, that the other players have to react to that new rule, which makes their game more interesting if it's designed well. And that's the thing that I think we should always be thinking about when we're adding, the balance and the reward systems and the kind of engagement mechanics, the things that lets us feel like we're progressing, not just the things we buy, but the things we progress, needs to feel like it's making everybody's game better. Because that's when it becomes really engaging, it becomes really satisfying. If you end up with something which gives you the, superpower card, you just annoy people. And we don't want to annoy people, we want to engage people. But these things come in different forms. So again, think about this from a point of view of, we're trying to talk about balance here, economies of rewards, the way they operate. So think about this as if I have something, say it's fuel, and I get a consumable version of fuel. What does that mean? Well, I can do a certain number of races in this particular car, and once I've used up all my fuel, I've got to fill up my tank again. Well, how much fuel do I have? Well, we can have capacity. So we could upgrade the capacity, we could give away consumable items, we can basically have a certain number of size of our fuel tank. Maybe we can upgrade our car to have a bigger fuel tank. Maybe we can buy a gas station or unlock a way to have an attendant that gives us more fuel every 5 minutes or something. Our fuel tank starts to fill up. So now we've got this mechanism that can keep us coming back and retain us. What's interesting is capacity and generators are basically the same thing. One is the cap on how many I can currently have. The other is how quickly it fills up. But what's interesting about that is that you end up with some really fine details of how people will engage with the game, the frequency they will return, the way that they value items. If you have enough fuel coming in and you end up with full capacity all the time, every time you're not playing, you're missing out on your optimization of the game. And optimization in gameplay is massively interesting. It's a real motivator for a lot of players. Aspiration goods, for me, that's the durable items. This is the CSR Go, a long time ago. It was the red charity offer. It was $14.99. I literally bought that. It was literally me taking a screen grab of me buying that thing because I wanted the red car. It was Bugatti. It was good. It's cool. It allowed me to do something interesting in that game. By the way, the same process absolutely works in PC games as well. It doesn't necessarily have to be about buying. It's about unlocking whatever exchange mechanism we do. But the interesting thing about aspirational things, once I've got them, I don't care about them anymore because it's part of my default game now. So thinking about how you break up the items and the strategy, so having a fuel, that you then have a fuel tank, you can increase your capacity, you have a generator, for a gas station. You get a better car, which means you need more fuel. And now the cycle continues. You can make the game more engaging. You're thinking about the systems and balancing. Balancing is what matters here. There's a book called Hooked, which is about how to build habit-forming experiences. It's not a game-specific thing. It's quite an interesting model. Having a trigger, having an action, having a variable reward, having some investment that makes me want to keep doing it. And to me, this is my game design framework, which is I have a start condition, I have a challenge, I have a resolution, I have a reward. Nice and easy. It's the same process. But what's interesting for me is the emotional journey that's going on here. What has this got to do with economies? It's all intrinsic because I have a start condition, which is where I'm going to start with my game session today. I start off in a nice relaxed state. I have anticipation. As I am presented with the challenge I'm going to experience, I'm going to do something about it. But that's introduced tension. So I've now moved from relief and I'm emotionally heading towards tension, but I still anticipate because I'm not currently doing the thing. Now I resolve it. I'm now doing the thing. That takes me from anticipation to fear of missing out. What if I get it wrong? What if I fail? What if I get it, if I can't achieve the target? What if I'm not skilled enough? At this point of tension as well. And that is the intensity that lets me feel the thing I'm doing is meaningful. And then if I go to the reward, what's interesting there is, what we'll see is if we give you satisfaction entirely at that point, we lose you. We actually need to give you just enough satisfaction to feel that that process was valuable and good, and the relief, and I've done it, fantastic, I've got the thing. But I need to be set up to want the next thing. And again, bear in mind, this is intentionally a way of thinking for repeatable game experiences. So it's a way of thinking about economies and balancing and play as we work through that. Now, doing it for the core game is fine. But when we actually kind of create these kind of experiences, we actually have to go a bit further. We have to actually think about the higher level. Some people will call this the meta game. It's not. Meta means not part of the game. This is absolutely part of the game. I call it context because I want to know what is my reason for doing this, my purpose. It needs to be understood immediately when I'm playing. I need to know what my progression is. I need to see how far I've come and how far I've got to go and why I should get there. I need to know what my optimization options are. And in optimization, that is where I find true satisfaction for repeatable, ongoing games. I got into Fallout 76 quite late. I didn't want to spend the money when it was broken. When it came out on Game Pass, I had a go at it and I fell in love with it because it has that point where I've got to go and do small things to gather all the resources, get all the resources, then I go and do the actual missions where I use up all those resources. So my optimization of time means I'm going from one thing to the other, I'm going different purposes, and I'm trying to get the sweet spot of the best possible equipment to solve the best possible problem. And that's just a common thing that can be applied to any number of game genres. And finally, I think of narrative as the payoff. Now, narrative can be a payoff directly, or it can be my story in the game. And that's why I love things like EVE Online as a principle, because the players make their story out of their experiences. And the payoff is them going through that process, optimizing, and then coming out at the end of it. But you'll notice on this diagram, I've got the same emotional journeys. And the same thing applies to the cultural level, what I call the cultural level, where I think about the lifestyle of the player, cooperation, how we cooperate in a game, how we compete in a game, and what I call zeitgeist. Basically, why would anyone want to watch you playing that game? How many people think about the audience of your player watching the game as your player plays it? Because you should, yes, great, couple of hands. Absolutely vital, especially now, we are increasingly on PC dependent on streamer engagement to be found. So anyway, I've gone on to that a little bit more than I probably should, but I like to think about these flows and these cycles and these processes. So what we'll move on to is now thinking about the economy. Hopefully I've hinted at some of the things we want to balance. We've talked about subsistence goods. We've talked about shortcuts. If you think about what those are, you can translate that to any game. the power up, the health potion, the better sword, the better armor, the better steed, the nice skin on the the armor that I'm wearing, or the vehicle paint that I'm using, or the paint on the gun, for example, or any number of things. Now I want to think about what that means in the economy of the game. And again, why does this matter so much for multiplayer? Why am I bothering with this stuff? And you don't have to have all of it solved at the start of the day. But if you don't have vectors that you can do this with, you will not be able to effectively monetize your game. You need to be able to know how this works. So sinks and sources, if you're American, I'm going to be talking about faucets and drains. I like sinks and sources. I'm British. That's the way we talk about it. If you're American, faucets and drains. So what's this about? It's about system thinking. We don't teach system thinking enough. And if you're a designer and you're not thinking in systems, you will not be effective. Because the best analogy I think I've heard is, imagine a bathtub, but it's covered. We can't see how high the water is. All we know is how much we've turned the taps on and how much water is coming out the drain. And you've got to keep it balanced. If it runs out of water, game over. If it overflows, game over. The sink, the system is a black box. It's impossible to see what's inside. We've got to work out systematically what happens. So I think this is a massively important thing. One of my favorite interview techniques is getting a designer to draw the process of making toast. Genuinely, I do this. It's fantastic to understand how people think. You see the difference between people who think only linearly and those who think in systems. And you also get to see particularly QA-capable people who will think of all the edge cases. Love that. Anyway, so I'm in search of balance, and I'm going to use various techniques. There are various techniques for working balance. I'm currently trying to write a book on the subject. So you can look at it in the loops, which is kind of why I have that diagram earlier. But I also have a kind of grid system. This is a bit like a double entry bookkeeping, to be very boring. If you're an accountant, you'll know what I mean with double entry bookkeeping. But you've got a sink, you've got a source or a drain or a faucet. And I want to know, divide up the way the game experience operates. Is it around the player or the player inventory? Is it around the game itself? Is it about progression? Is it rewards? Is it offers? And I want to know all of the things that make the game interesting, those things we talked about that players care about. Where are the sources? Where are they going to come from? What do I have to do to get them? What do I have to sync to get them? And that allows you to understand the flow of what's happening in the game very quickly. It allows you to understand what balance looks like. It allows you to understand that there is scope for all sorts of forms of exchange in the game. And there are many forms of exchange in games. Some people, if you're thinking about PC, will go, oh my God, it's got ads on there. Don't worry, I'll cover that in a bit. But others will see that this is kind of interesting because there are multiple different forms. Every game will have a unique set that works for it. Not every game will use all of these things. But I put them alongside as a line because I want you to think about this. If I've got to go through an interstitial ad, and we've all done it on a mobile game, I'm sure, how annoying does that get? How many times do you have to get that to rage quit? There's fatigue that happens in any transactional process, and we have to bear that in mind as part of our thinking about the economy of a game. And in particular, I think that if you look about spending real money, there's a lot of barrier to particularly the first spend. And if we don't understand that, there are barriers to that, we're not going to get it. But exchange is not always financial. Exchange can be in the grind. Exchange can be in the in-game currency. If you have that, exchange can be in the alchemic resources that you need to gather to make your potions. That's still a form of exchange, and the rate in which you earn them through play and use them through play matters. So thinking about all that stuff, I think, is one continuum, and we have to understand the impact it has on fatigue. So soft currency is as important to me as real money. Now, obviously, in-world ads does not work for most games. I mean, you've got to have a modernish context for that to make sense. But if you've got a racing game and you're not doing an in-game ad, you're probably missing out something. Ads generally aren't PC friendly at the moment. Might be one day, but in particular, if the ad companies continue the way they are with mobile, we're going to see fewer and fewer people relying on mobile ads, because when you have a 30-second ad and then I've got to wait 30 seconds more because they're forcing me to do a playable of a game I didn't choose, and now I'm having to wait on the store page for another 30 seconds, I've just lost a minute and a half. Is that worth it? So I think we have some problems right now in the way things go. Blocking immersion is a problem. Payment is also interesting, but it's not the only way. Anyway, monetization, my point here is that monetization isn't the only form of exchange we have to think about, but it is one. I want to turn that all on its head. Most of you won't know who this guy is. Some people might. I see Guy does. Now, I believe that Columbo is the greatest TV show ever made. And it's not just me that says this. This is Stephen Fry, one of a famous English individual, talks about this quite a lot. Columbo is a TV show that epitomizes the not the whodunit, but the how did they do it. So you actually see at the beginning of a Columbo episode, you see the murder, who the murderer is. So why would you watch it? The reason you watch it is because you're interested in this guy, who is a bumbling idiot. He's a buffoon. He follows the most ridiculous clues, and your job is to work out which ones led him to decide who the murderer was. And the game is this, and it is a game. 5 minutes before the end, he says the immortal line, "Just one more thing." That means time's up. And then you find out, were you right? Because he'll tell you the clues that told him how that was the murderer. So you're trying to work that out. So you've been watching the whole show. And there are episodes where random people happen to get in the frame and people think they were intentional and they weren't. And that makes the whole thing really interesting. Now, what's this got to do with games? Well, what it is it's about describing predictable surprise. So we know the moment is coming. We know we're going to be delighted, because if we find out we were right about how Columbo found out, we feel great. If we find out we were wrong, we find out what we missed and we feel great. And so what we want to do when we're creating these experiences is to create a sense of predictable surprise. How we engage with an audience is going to come down to getting this right. I also think it's really important to think about the following. We've got this idea of, that predictable surprise. And that leads into how we create senses of desirability. And again, not necessarily about the monetization itself, but just how we get rewards, how we get upgrades, how we progress, how we aspire to things. And the idea of impulse, that kind of marshmallow delight, I want that delight now. In fact, there's a whole interesting test of kids choosing marshmallows, which got semi-debunked, interestingly. I'm happy to tell you about that because I think it's fascinating. But impulse control is a really interesting one. You tell a kid that they can have 2 marshmallows if they don't eat the marshmallow, and then you leave the room for 5 minutes. And at a certain age point, they typically did eat it, and other age groups they didn't. Anyway, the impulse is really interesting human nature, interesting human behavior. Progression, feeling a sense of progression, feeling a sense of, I have this to look forward to. This is what's over the hill. I need to get there. Optimization. I cannot stress how important optimization is. The ability to feel like I've got personal empowerment in how I operate play and therefore get the results. And by the way, it doesn't have to be real. It has to be felt. Hopefully it's real too, but you can, I think Tim was mentioning this there, you can fake a lot of these things. And I don't mean that in a way of manipulating people. Don't manipulate people. Manipulation works once, maybe twice, but people find out and they get very angry with you, and do not try to recover from that. It's not going to work. And then things like hero's journey, narrative, all those things help me feel engaged in an experience. Grind, this is what I'm saying about exchange. Grind is a form of exchange. If I'm not great at multiplayer games, if my skill isn't great, Reward me for trying. I don't mean participation reward here. I'm talking about effort. If your progression track is suitably designed, that doesn't undermine skill, but does compensate for people who don't have it, great. Resources, the ability to be able to unlock things, then choose how I allocate those resources to do the upgrades and progression in the way I want to. Anchors. Now, anchors is an interesting one. And the way I make this mess of all of these different things I've been talking about manageable is I always have an anchor resource or currency. What that means is an anchor can only be obtained through play. You can never buy it. So you have to have done the thing in order to be able to unlock other things you want in the game. It makes your maths involved in understanding balance so much easier. The other one, Ratchet, is a similar principle. Ratchet means I cannot unlock something unless I've attained something in play. So it's similar but slightly different. I can earn this thing in play, and that can be used to spend on upgrades or whatever. Or I can have this ratchet, which means I can't use the level 12 sword until I'm level 12, for example. So these are typical ways that I will use to help me deal with the resource allocation, the reward allocation, to make people feel good about the things that they've done, and to compartmentalize those gameplay elements that make the experience worthwhile, and be able to track that and adapt that and scale that without going completely mad with the maths. Anyone who's really good at maths, I'm not. I recommend using things like Monte Carlo simulations to make sure your structure works. I have to do it the hard way, which is I basically sit there and brute force it with playtesting and spreadsheets, because that's what I'm used to. That's how I learned to do it. That's great, but also remember that we have another side of this, which is thinking about the player and why they should do this now. Time-limited offers, time-limited opportunities, seasonal content. I'm a massive fan of seasonal content. Doesn't mean that you have to create new assets every month, necessarily. It can help if you can. You don't have to create a new map every month. That kills studios. Literally kills studios. You can actually repurpose experiences and package them with narratives to make them meaningful, and use scarcity and special offers to make that something that feels pertinent to the player. So we can be clever about how we manage experiences. We can be clever about how we create moments and reasons to play, and seasonality doesn't just have to be a whole bunch of cosmetic content. Quite the opposite. It's probably better to have one chase item a month than necessarily having 50. Because no one's going to feel that much better. You're not going to be 50 times more people interested because you've got 50 more costumes. If the top premium item is really, really exciting and people want it, well, it's going to be gone next month. The only way you get it is if you unlock it this month. So it becomes a mark of kudos if you are participating in that period of time. Pricing. Pricing is an actual art. Anyone who thinks that, we'll just think $17.99, that's all right. Why are you $17.99? Why are you $24.99? Why are you $79.99? Pricing says something about what you are. And the reason why I avoid using the word premium for buy up front, because when you buy up front, you're buying up front. Premium means something. As a trained marketeer, I did spill that little bit of information earlier. As a marketeer, premium means that it is high price and high quality. It doesn't matter if I buy it in the game. It doesn't matter if the game itself is that. It doesn't matter if it's a skin, an upgrade, or a monthly special offer. Premium has a specific meaning. And you have to understand what your pricing strategy is. If you are going to Steam and you are launching an indie game at $24.99, which we did, you are setting an expectation. If you don't live up to that expectation, in other words, this is a AAA quality, this is not just your average indie game, you are going to be letting people down in their expectations. And they will punish you for it. If you launch a game at $12.99 and it's an indie game, you might be under setting the expectations. Depends on the game. Imagine releasing a game for $3.99. Yes, there is an argument. There is an argument. You're just trying to make it available to everybody. But what you're basically saying is my game is trash. I mean, that is, from a pricing strategy point of view, you're saying that. Your game may not be trash. Your game may be excellent. I'm not trying to cast dispersions on the game. I'm just saying from a marketing strategy point of view, setting your price isn't just about the number. It's saying what the quality bar that you're doing. And there are lots of different techniques and processes like conditional discounts, loss leading, value statements, and so forth. Am I getting across that if we're going to launch a game, we haven't thought about the commercial model, we haven't thought about the game economy and balance and the ability to upgrade and forward and progress and allow people to play together, we're not going to get a sustained experience. It's a lot of thinking. We don't have to implement everything, but it is a lot of thinking we should be doing as early as possible. I probably shouldn't do this, but I like talking about this one, and that's hot dog economics. I'll give you what that means. Some people will use this as a dark pattern. I don't mean this as a dark pattern. I mean this is what makes Fallout 76 really interesting to me. When you buy hot dogs, you buy them in packs of 8. When you buy hot dog buns, they come in packs of 6. Hang on a minute. So what do I do with the extra 2 hot dogs? Well, I'll just get another pack of buns. But now I've got 4 extra buns, and I haven't got enough hot dogs. So, okay, I'll go and buy my extra hot dogs. Now I've got 4 extra hot dogs. This imbalance, reason why I like talking about this is in balancing your game economy, in balancing your game design, the reward systems that you use, imbalance is as important as balance. Understanding where the imbalance is helps you understand where the imperative is to continue playing. It's an intrinsic part. And again, like I say, some people have used this technique as a bad thing. That's not why I'm recommending it. I'm saying it helps us identify some human behavior. So if we're playing a multiplayer game, if we're playing against somebody else and we're trying to level up our character ability, access to maps, or whatever else, we're thinking about where we're leaving that unsatisfied appetite. And that is as important as getting the satisfaction. It's a balance between balance and imbalance. And why do I love a good battle pass? Anyone think battle passes are terrible? Anyone? Okay, well, maybe a hand there. But honestly, I have tried. We had a game, COD game. We announced it as a battle pass. We got slated. Battle passes on Steam are considered to be evil by a lot of players. Why? Well, because some games did a bad job of them. I can understand if you've had a bad experience with the battle pass, if you've seen a battle pass and you think it's just a money-making exercise, all that game company did is withdraw content that should have been in the original game. If that's how you feel, you're entitled to that feeling. But a good battle pass for me is this. As a free player, and again, I'm using free to play, I'm not saying every game has to be free to play. As a free player, I want to know that I can get anything. Any one thing. And I can do that by playing more. And the more that I play, the more that I get. That, to me, sounds like a good model. But if I happen to be a VIP player, if I happen to have the battle pass, then I can unlock more things. And I can get, like the free player, I can get anything. But if I work hard enough, if I play this game extensively enough, and only through play, can I unlock everything available in that season? And that, to me, is a good experience for everybody. No one can feel like they're being let down. No one can feel like they're being excluded from content as long as you've got good balance in the material. I think creating good experiences, which makes people feel that spending money to contribute to the game developer, because frankly, I think we're entitled to be paid for great work. I think, I don't feel ashamed about wanting to be paid for great work. But I want to keep the servers running. I think that's important. I think keeping the servers running matters. I want players to feel that if they're contributing to play, and a free player contributes to play, they're contributing that critical mass. We should value them just as much as a paying player. Well, yeah, we should, yes, genuinely we should value them as much as a paying player. But the paying players are the ones who are going to help us be able to take that game further. And if we focus on creating value for players as we build forward, if we create the space in the design from day one, then scarcity becomes meaningful. Then upgrades become meaningful. The design of rewards becomes meaningful. And it's only as the guy from CCP, where are you? One of the guys from CCP were talking earlier, those meaningful choices that make a difference. We're trying to avoid game over. There have been enough scenarios I've been involved with. When they shut down PlayStation Home on the 1st of April, which is April Fool's Day in the UK. Yes, they shut down an environment on April Fool's Day. Some of the best community response to that ever. I will bore you if anyone's interested. But when you see that go down, people sat in their apartments with their friends all night long waiting for the servers to get shut off. Thousands of people sat waiting for the servers to get shut off. That's tragic. And 10 years later, the whole community for that experience rebuilt PlayStation Home from binaries. It can currently be played. And what's interesting is Sony didn't shut it down. We want to avoid that tragedy. We only avoid that tragedy if we've thought about what keeps that game experience going. And it's not just about money. It's about making it sustainable, engaging, and retaining. We need data. We need to think about what's going on. We need to observe it. We need to test our hypotheses. We need to look at performance. We need to budget. And we can't just budget based on building the thing. How many of you are building live testing into your development budgets? Anyone? You need to be. Yeah, good. Thank you. Great. I mean, you need to be. When we see pitches, when I'm asked to do due diligence on a game team, quite often they just say, oh, this is going to be this much to make the game. And there's no testing. There's no proof. There's no understanding that there's an audience for that game. There's no way of checking that when they get 6, 12, 20, 100, whatever the number of concurrent players they need to have a single session, that it's actually going to be fun. How do they know that? How are they testing that? You need to build in that testing process in your original pitch. And you also, if you're going to run a service, and a multiplayer game has to be a service, you need to make sure you've built in how you're going to sustain that. Because you can't just fire and forget. This isn't a disc-based game anymore. This is a game that's going to require ongoing achievement. So again, I'm back to the point. If you want to raise your budget, if you're going to raise the money to make a multiplayer game, and you haven't thought about the commercial model, and you haven't thought about the testing process, and you haven't thought about how you're going to sustain it in live afterwards, who's going to give you that money that's sane? They're not going to do it. So that's why we have to think about the economy. We have to think about balance. We have to think about sustaining services. And live is an ongoing process. And if you look at the Griffin Gaming Report from 2023, something like 98% of game teams either already have live games or are building live games. This isn't a... I'm not talking about the scary subscription-only experiences necessarily. You know, that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about sustained, engaging experiences. It's massively important. It's very important for players, and it's something that's challenging. I won't bore you with pipelines and stuff like that. It's for another time. I'm coming back to this. I said it before. The TLDR of this is we need to build engagement. We don't have a multiplayer experience if we don't have engagement. If we build engagement, we can build retention. And only if we build engagement and retention do we generate revenues. And only if we have revenues can we keep the game going. That's basically me. So, does anyone have any last-minute questions for me? I literally can talk about any subject, probably. Go for it, yeah. I'm going to come down with the mic for you.
Thank you. I'm just curious what you think about Monopoly's Go model, because it's quite successful.
Oh, okay. There is an industry out there called gambling. And, sorry, I'm not trying to say Monopoly Go is a gambling game at all. Just don't get me wrong. And honestly, I have utmost admiration for the Scopely guys and what they've done with Monopoly Go. It's amazing. It's not a game for me. And I mean that in both senses of the phrase. I don't see it as a game, but I have very strict definitions of what a game is. They're not necessarily rational. But it is, for me, it epitomizes what the social casino industry were doing a few years ago, which most of the social casino guys got bought up by the big Vegas gambling casinos. I say most, a lot of the ones I knew were. But I think Monopoly Go does capture something that's interesting that idle games tapped into as well. So you've got an IP that's very familiar and very cozy. You've got a process which is very ad-friendly, very monetization-friendly. And all I do is I tap. It's very, what's the word I'm looking for? Tactile. And if you're sat there and you're seeking escape from your drudgery job and you've got your phone out and you can open it up once in a while, it's basically a cigarette break. So it's not a game I'm going to make. I get it. I get why they've done it. It doesn't excite me. I understand why people find it satisfying. Does that answer the question? Great. Anyone else? Like I say, I have many views on many things. Again, I'm trying to stick to this idea of ethical design because I want games to be games. I want to have a game. To me, if there's no dilemma, if there's no challenge, if there's no meaningful choice, is that a game? Yeah, cool. Anyone else? On that note, if you don't have a question, that's fine. I will be around. I'm literally currently working on a book with CRC Press on game economy design. If you thought this was interesting or have any comments or if you disagree with me, please tell me if you disagree with me. Then reach out to me. I'll be very delighted to talk to you further. Thank you very much.